It was exciting to be able to play somebody with so many layers, because on the page she could seem bad, but once you understand her humanity.
Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni both picked up some big mentions recently, though not the kind anyone really wants. The Hollywood Reporter just came out with their annual list of the biggest winners and losers in Hollywood for 2025, and sadly, these two landed near the top of the losers' side. It's a tough read, but it really captures how this whole situation has dragged on and affected everyone involved. Let me share a bit from that article with you. It's pretty eye-opening. They described Blake and Justin as being locked in what feels like mutually assured destruction. It's like a long, painful spiral that's pulled in so many people around them. And in the end, nobody comes out looking better. The only ones who seem to benefit are the lawyers. And maybe folks like us who can't help but follow along with a little popcorn in hand every time a new update drops. It's dramatic, isn't it? And then, to top it off, Colleen Hoover, the author of It Ends With Us, recently opened up and said she's now almost embarrassed to admit she wrote the book. Wow, that hits hard, especially knowing how personal that story was for her. Here's the thing that's been on my mind. Blake really holds a lot of the cards right now. If she wanted, she could ask to have her lawsuit dismissed and let everyone move on. There are steps she could take to wrap this up. Justin, as the one being sued, doesn't have that same option. He's got to respond, file his motions, and wait for the court to decide if it goes to trial, settles, or gets thrown out. He's kind of stuck on this ride until it's over. Meanwhile, Blake's choosing to keep it going, even a full year after that big New York Times story broke everything wide open. And speaking of careers, neither of them has had much on the big screen since It Ends With Us. Blake did a simple favor too. But beyond that, things have been quiet. Justin, who was more known for TV and directing his own projects, hasn't had a major film role pop up either. There are whispers in Hollywood, nothing official of course, that some folks might be hesitant to work with either of them right now because of all this. Blake might say it's the lawsuit holding things back, but you have to wonder if offers are coming in like they used to. It's quite a shift, isn't it? Just a year ago, that New York Times piece had everyone rethinking the whole story, putting Blake front and center as the one standing up. Now, looking back at 2025, it feels like the tide has turned, and people are seeing it more as this endless back and forth that's worn everyone out. What a roller coaster. Friends, I truly hope Justin and his whole team come through this stronger on the other side. Honestly, I don't place much blame on him here. I think he just got caught up with the wrong folks at a tough time. And his team? They don't strike me as the villains in this story at all. People like Jamie Heath and his PR folks seem like decent professionals doing their jobs. In my view, Blake has been pretty effective at shaping the narrative in the media. And that's colored how a lot of this looks. That loser mention in the Hollywood Reporter really underscores how Hollywood sees her right now, doesn't it? But let's shift to what's happening in court. There's been a real pushback lately. Just recently, lawyers for Wayfarer Studios responded strongly to Blake's latest request for sanctions over alleged improper behavior during a deposition. Last time, we touched on how it felt like stories were being shared with the press to paint Wayfarer's questions as crossing lines into personal matters, like Blake's romantic history, which Wayfarer firmly pushed back on in their filing.
I don't believe anybody's good or bad. She's definitely flawed. She's definitely damaged. But she was very complex.
They also argued that Blake's side might be overusing court filings in ways that stir up more headlines. Importantly, they made the full transcript of that deposition public on the record. So now we can all see exactly what went down behind closed doors. From what stands out to me, and this is just my take, the lawyer for Blake's side seemed frustrated when questions didn't go the way they hoped. There were interruptions, some back and forth between the attorneys, which isn't unheard of in these intense sessions, and threats to involve the judge whenever things got sticky. It felt tense, sure, but reading it, I didn't see Wayfarer's side as the ones at fault. Here's the key part. This expert, a woman named Nicole Alexander, specializes in digital and social media patterns. Wayfarer brought her in to counter claims that there was some organized negative campaign against Blake online from August 2024 through early 2025. Instead, she was there to explain it as natural public reaction tied to normal news and entertainment cycles. She sat for a full 7-hour deposition with Blake's lawyers asking the questions. And in a footnote that really clears things up, Wayfarer's response notes, this had absolutely nothing to do with Blake's personal, romantic, or sexual history. But Blake's motion attached an old letter from months back complaining about certain questions that actually related to her public reputation, which she's put front and center in this case. Since no court relief was sought back then, and isn't now, Wayfarer believes this was really about generating splashy, negative headlines and unfairly attacking their lawyer's character. They even pointed to articles, like one in Variety saying questions about her sex history should be off limits, and another claiming disruptive probing into her personal life. So, they took it straight to the judge, laid out the facts, and shared the full context. It's refreshing to see the record set straight like that. You see, Wayfarer's side is pushing back hard, saying those questions weren't about Blake's private romantic or sexual life at all. They were tied directly to her public reputation, which she's made a big part of this case. I've mentioned before how narratives can get framed in ways that aren't the full picture, and this feels like one of those moments. We're still waiting to see more from the transcripts if they come out, but for now, it's clear both sides are digging in. What stands out is how Wayfarer rarely goes to the court just to stir up headlines. They say this motion from Blake's team seems designed more for that than anything else. Blake's lawyers have leaned on this approach a few times, attaching select pieces to paint a certain story. They point to the rules: objections and depositions should be short, clear, and not argumentative or leading. Courts can step in with sanctions if someone's really blocking a fair process. But here, Blake's side only shared about 35 pages, roughly 10% of the full transcript. Wayfarer attached the whole thing so the judge could see the complete context, arguing it shows the deposition went smoothly overall. Their lawyers made proper, concise objections, no long speeches, and let the expert answer nearly everything. No key areas were blocked, they say. And those moments Blake highlighted as interruptions? Turns out, in one example on page 59, it was actually Blake's lawyer who got confused. She didn't realize the expert had updated her report a month earlier. Wayfarer's counsel calmly pointed it out and offered a break to sort it. It went something like this. The expert mentions it's an amended report. Blake's lawyer questions when it was sent, then insists they never got it. Wayfarer's side checks with their team and suggests a short pause. But Blake's lawyer wants to go off the record entirely until it's resolved, saying they can't continue if the report isn't current. You can imagine the tension in the room, everyone wanting to keep things moving fairly, but hitting a snag over a simple mix-up. It's moments like these that show how heated these sessions can get, yet Wayfarer argues their side handled it professionally. All in all, they're asking the judge to look at the full record and see this motion for what it is, more about headlines than real misconduct. Friends, this back and forth in that deposition room really shows how quickly things can get heated when everyone's under pressure. After that break, to sort out the amended report, Blake's lawyer comes back and tries to confirm which version is which. The expert admits she wasn't sure at first. But then they pull up the files, and it turns out the amended one had indeed been shared properly. It's one of those moments where a simple oversight snowballs, and suddenly everyone's questioning what they received. A little embarrassing, perhaps, but these things happen in long, detailed cases like this. Wayfarer's filing goes on to explain that this was actually Nicole Alexander's very first deposition ever, let alone a remote one. So their lawyer politely suggested she download the full exhibits to review them properly, just like you would flip through papers in person instead of squinting at tiny shared screens. Makes sense, doesn't it? Small courtesy to keep things fair. Then there's this part about a lengthy article referenced in the report. Blake's lawyer asks the expert to summarize it, and poor Miss Alexander gets confused, wondering if she was supposed to recall it all from memory on the spot. When Wayfarer's counsel gently asks for clarification on the question, things escalate a bit. Instead of just rephrasing, there was some sharp back and forth. At one point, the expert seemed lost in the line of questioning, and Wayfarer's side suggested letting her finish speaking so the question could be cleared up. You can almost feel the frustration building. Honestly, reading through it all, it's striking how Blake's motion painted Wayfarer's team as the ones causing trouble, when a lot of the interruptions and shortness actually came from the other side. They even ended up needing the judge's help over one of these exchanges. It's a reminder that these depositions aren't casual chats, they're intense, and tempers can flare. Wayfarer doesn't stop there. They point out a couple of standard rules that Blake's lawyer didn't follow right at the start. For instance, she never gave the usual instruction, if you don't understand a question, just say so, and I'll rephrase it. That's pretty basic stuff to make sure everything stays fair. They also defend gently reminding the witness to answer when possible, even after an objection. That's normal defense practice, not misconduct. And here's an interesting twist. Wayfarer brings up examples of what real speaking objections look like, pulling from another deposition in this case, Jenny Slate's, taken back in September 2025. Those excerpts are from Blake's own side, and they're currently sealed, so we can't peek at them yet. But it does make you raise an eyebrow, doesn't it? Feels like they're saying, if we're talking about improper coaching or long objections, let's look at the full picture. They've attached the entire Alexander transcript for the judge to review. It's dense, full of deep dives into social media patterns and how public buzz really works online. I'll probably circle back to some of the highlights another day, because it's fascinating stuff. For now, though, this response from Wayfarer's team feels like a calm, thorough effort to set the record straight. You know, friends, there are a few more details in Wayfarer's response that really highlight how these depositions can turn into a real tug-of-war. For starters, they point out that Blake's lawyer, Ms. Giverki, never gave the standard advice at the beginning, that the witness could ask for a break if she needed one, whether to stretch, get water, or just catch her breath. Yet, when Wayfarer's side suggested a short break after 2 solid hours of questioning for both the expert and the court reporter, Ms. Giverki pushed back. She even claimed there was still a question hanging in the air, using that as a reason to say no. Turns out the stenographer confirmed there wasn't any pending question at all. It's one of those small moments that adds up, making you shake your head a little. Overall, though, once everyone took a pause and even checked in with the court, the rest of the deposition went pretty smoothly. Wayfarer argues Blake hasn't shown any real way the process was truly blocked or dragged out. They also dive into a disagreement over privilege, things like attorney-client conversations or work product. The expert had spoken with separate lawyers from a different firm, not the main trial team, but she couldn't quite recall exactly who. Blake's side kept pressing on that, and Wayfarer's counsel instructed her not to answer certain parts to protect those privileges. That led to some back and forth, with Ms. Giverki debating the instructions right there in the room, something the rules generally discourage. Wayfarer says the proper step would have been to pause, talk it out privately, or ask the judge for guidance, not turn it into an on-the-spot argument. Here's the gracious part. Wayfarer actually offers a solution in their filing. They say if Blake's team had just talked to them first, as the court's rules encourage, they would have happily agreed to a short follow-up session focused only on those privileged communications, who said what facts or data that shape the experts' opinions. They're even putting that offer on the record now. It feels like they're saying, we could have worked this out quietly, but instead it went straight to a big motion in court. A bit of a pattern, they suggest, when frustrations boil over. And then they wrap up strong. This whole request to sanction the Wayfarer lawyers is over the top. It claims some ongoing pattern of bad behavior, but doesn't point to a single past example from these attorneys. The cases Blake's side cites involve lawyers flat out ignoring court orders or dragging out pointless fights, nothing like what's alleged here. Finally, they turn it around gently but firmly. The only real ongoing pattern anyone can see, they say, is the habit of taking these disputes to the media to paint others in a harsh light and pull attention away from the actual legal questions. Wow, when you read it laid out like that, it's quite a strong rebuttal, isn't it? Calm, detailed, and leaving the door open for reasonable fixes. Hey there, folks. Let's keep going with this filing. It's got some real fire in the details. Wayfarer tucked in a footnote that really sums up the irony of the whole thing. They point out that it was actually Miss Giverke who started debating the instructions right in the middle of the deposition, which prompted Brian Friedman, one of the Wayfarer attorneys, to politely ask her to stop that kind of back and forth. And those other examples Blake's team brought up from Jamie Heath's deposition? Totally different situation. That was about long breaks Blake's side was taking. And neither Friedman nor the main lawyers we're talking about here were even the ones raising the issue. Bottom line, Wayfarer is telling the judge, this motion skips the usual steps of talking it out first, and it feels a lot like another attempt to push a misleading story to the press, just to stir things up and pull everyone's eyes away from the real issues in the case. I have to say, after reading all this, I'm inclined to agree. It does seem more about headlines than courtroom fairness. Now, one of the moments they highlight happened pretty early in the deposition, and it's a perfect example of how fast things can get tense. It starts over a question touching on attorney-client privilege. The expert, Miss Alexander, is asked if she's following her lawyer's instruction not to answer certain things. She says yes. Then questions come up about whether she'd spoken to certain people before or understood the vetting process, and each time, her counsel properly instructs her not to answer to protect privilege. Miss Giverke pushes for the basis of those instructions, which is fair to ask, but it quickly turns into a sharper exchange. Brian Friedman jumps in, maybe a bit heated, and says, "Can we stop with the speaking objections?" Miss Giverke fires back that it's her deposition to run, and asks that Friedman, who isn't officially the lead counsel on record for this session, be muted or quieted down. Then things really heat up. Friedman says something along the lines of, "You're the one giving speaking objections. Your mouth is moving right now," and tells her she's handling it improperly. Voices rise a little. Threats to go to the judge fly, and Miss Giverke even says she's just trying to understand the privilege claim. You can almost picture everyone leaning into their screens, tempers flaring on what should have been a straightforward legal protection. It's one of those raw moments that shows how personal and frustrating these long sessions can get, especially when big money and reputations are on the line. Nobody looks great when it turns into a shouting match over procedure, but Wayfarer's point is that their side was trying to keep things moving properly, while the motion blows these moments way out of proportion. All in all, this response from Wayfarer feels like a firm, no-nonsense pushback. Let's stick to the rules, talk before running to court or the media, and keep the focus on the actual facts of the case. There it is, friends. The exchange keeps going, and you can really feel the frustration building on both sides. Mr. Fritz pushes back, saying something like, "No, I'd actually like you to explain your basis for claiming privilege here." Miss Giverke stays firm, "I'm not going to debate this during the deposition." Then she wisely turns back to the witness and asks a straightforward question about how Miss Alexander ended up on that August phone call. The expert explains she was connected through a consulting firm, perfectly normal in these cases. Here's the key point Wayfarer hammers home. Under the federal rules, once a lawyer objects or instructs the witness not to answer, especially on something protected like privilege, that should wrap it up right there. The questioning attorney is supposed to note it for the record and move on, or save it for a proper motion later. But instead, Miss Giverke kept pressing Fritz to justify his instruction over and over, turning the deposition transcript into a debate about procedure rather than the actual facts of the case. That's exactly what courts frown on. It creates unnecessary tension, drags things out, and can make the whole room feel hostile. Wayfarer's side asked her several times to stop the back and forth, but it continued. So when Blake's motion later accuses the other team of misconduct, Wayfarer flips it around and says, "Look who was actually turning this into an argument." In a high-profile case like this, I honestly suspect the judge will deny the sanctions request outright. Blake's team never tried to work it out privately first. No quick call or meet and confer, which the court's own rules strongly encourage. They also never asked for a short continuation of the deposition to clear up the few privileged points. Wayfarer has already offered that extra hour on the record, limited to just what's needed. My guess? The judge will say, take them up on it, finish the deposition, and let's move on. No sanctions, no fees awarded either way. At the end of the day, it feels like skipping those normal steps was more about getting a dramatic story out to the media than fixing any real problem. And now, Blake's side is facing pushback for possibly misusing court filings to stir headlines, something the judge has already warned he won't tolerate. All told, it's been a rough stretch for Miss Lively. Hollywood's chatter has shifted, the loser label stings, and these courtroom setbacks are piling up. She's gone from the cover of the New York Times looking triumphant to facing some real embarrassment a year later. What do you all think? Is this feud finally starting to wind down, or are we in for more chapters? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from you. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please give the video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and tap the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for spending this time with me, friends. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.